I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, first, I'd like to start off by thanking everybody for coming. It's a Sunday morning. We did this on a Monday morning. It was a holiday for some. We did it on that same Monday night at 6 o'clock. And I'm going to try and go through the same thing we did at those two meetings. Everyone in the room that wants to speak will have their time to speak. We're not filling paperwork out like usually you have to come up and fill your paperwork out. All I ask is that you give your name and your address when you come up so we can kind of try and keep a record of what we're doing. We'll try and keep it as orderly as possible. If you possibly, please, if somebody comes up and says the same thing, if you have something a little different, it's fine. But to say the same thing over and over and over again, I've sat through too many meetings where everybody doesn't get a chance to talk. However, I'm not doing nothing today. I'll stay here until midnight if we have to get everybody to speak. So thank you that are here on time. The person that just came in was why we put the Sunday together. Mr. Bender, we got your message and we did exactly what you wanted. So this has worked out fine for us. So I'm going to turn this over to John Baytek. John Baytek is our finance guy. He's going to go through a series of charts of why we came to this conclusion that we came to, and then you'll all be able to ask questions. If you please could, hold them till the end. Both meetings have been very orderly, and write them down or think about them. I'd hate to stop him in the middle because he's like me. Once I stop, I get all, of course I use paper. He doesn't. So Mr. Baytek, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, members of the public. Good morning. I've been asked to lay a little bit of the foundation work for really what brings us here today. The village has, in its past, imposed a property tax, but that was way back in the 1970s, so it's been 40 years, probably more, since the village used property tax as part of its overall financial picture. To the best of our understanding, the villages of Carroll Stream, Oak Brook, and Willowbrook are the only communities in the DuPage County that continue to operate without a property tax, and I think that's been a source of pride for everybody in the community and in this room, quite frankly. One of the things we've noticed over the past year, over the past decade or so, following many of the rapid growth years in the village in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we've seen a lot of variability and volatility in many of the village's core revenue sources, particularly through the Great Recession and recovering from the Great Recession. Whether you folks know or not, the village is heavily reliant on sales taxes to support general village operations. Our 1% share of the state sales tax is our largest revenue source that supports operations. That has been in decline in each of the past 2 fiscal years that the village has undergone. In our present fiscal year, 2020, which ends April 30th on 2020, we're on a May 1 to April 30th fiscal cycle. We're currently down 4.1% in the current year as well. So those are some disturbing trends that we're seeing that are impacting operating budgets and capital, as we'll see. It won't come to a surprise to any of you here that the state of Illinois is also not in good fiscal health. In addition to increasing taxes on their own, you're all aware, we are all seeing income tax increases starting in 2011. I believe the state started increases, and then it stepped down, and then it stepped back up again. The state has effectively blocked municipal governments from sharing in those increases. And just let me rewind for a minute. Since 1969, 10% of all state income taxes have come back to municipal governments throughout the state on a per capita basis. So based on Carroll Stream's roughly 40,000 population, we receive dollars from the state to help support operations In 1969, the state eliminated communities' ability to impose a local income tax and instead said we'll share 10% of the revenues statewide with all towns throughout the state. So what they did when they raised income taxes in 2011, they basically reduced the percentage shared with local communities from 10% to just above 6% where it stands today. So that opportunity cost alone costs Carroll Stream residents millions of dollars per year in lost revenues. On top of that, if you followed a lot of the state budget actions over the past, actually decade, I mean, they've been struggling with a lot of problems with revenues and keeping expenditures in check as well. They have also cut back the allocations to communities. 2 years ago, they cut back 10% of our allotment, if you will, and then they reduced it to 5%, again, in the last 2 years, hoping we'll feel good about that. But once the state usually starts taking revenues, they find out, they say, oh, this is a one-time shot. Well, guess what? We're 3 years later, and they're still taking those revenues away from Carroll Stream. And really, they're using that for their own budget. The concept of a property tax in and of itself is not new. It's new in respect that we're having public forums about it. The village board every 2 years and executive staff meet and do some strategic planning and goal setting. And frequently, over the past decade, we've noted that stability of operating revenues has often been a very top priority of the board in terms of trying to stabilize some of these fluctuations that we've been seeing, because from an operating standpoint, and the village as a service organization, it's very difficult to try and maintain a certain complement of staffing that provides services with some of these disturbing trends we're seeing in revenues. So, a very quick crash course in municipal budgeting. This is highly simplified, but again, this is a topic that can take hours. I'll try and do it in a couple minutes here. The village maintains separate pots of money for various functions that the village cares for. The orange bubble that says village operations is just that. In the left margin, I've listed some of the common things that folks would normally associate day-to-day operations with. By far, our police department and the public works department are the largest operating departments in the village, and that makes up about 75% of all operating budget dollars. So things like police presence, public safety, snow plowing, mowing the rights of way, traffic signs, signals, all of that stuff we kind of categorize as day-to-day operations, and those need a steady funding source to ensure that those services are delivered. The blue bubble, it says water and sanitary sewer utility. Again, the village operates a separate sanitary sewer fund and water fund. That bubble is entirely supported essentially by all of the water bills you pay each month. So there are no tax dollars that are commingled to support the water and sewer fund. That stands on its own. And lastly, the capital bubble at the bottom, capital improvement plan. So the village has a robust 5-year, and it actually expands out to 10 years in terms of our planning horizon on capital improvement projects. And this is, I mean, the most common thing you can associate this with is the road program. So when roads are repaved or reconditioned, our stormwater sewer system, that's not the sanitary, that is the conveyance of stormwater. We have over 100 miles of underground pipes that deliver stormwater to where hopefully it doesn't wind up in people's backyards. It also covers major public facility improvements, such as this building. We're paid from this capital improvement plan. During the village's rapid growth years, and to this day, essentially, and I'll come full circle on that in a few slides, the capital improvements program has typically not had a dedicated revenue stream. It has relied on surpluses from the general fund to feed into it. So that arrow If the village has a good fiscal year and is able to have a surplus, and we have reserve policies on the operating side, but we'll transfer any excess over on the capital. And that's worked very well for the village for decades and decades. But again, the trends we're seeing on operating revenues are starting to impinge upon the ability to generate those surpluses. As an example, over the last 2 fiscal years, we were not able to make any transfers from the operating fund to fund capital. So that's obviously a concern. There are a couple meetings public meetings that we held in August. Those are the dates of them. If you're just new to this topic, we've had probably 2.5 hours of staff presentation and discussion, fairly voluminous charts. You can backtrack and view all of that material on the village's website. I'll just direct you to the website. You go to the news tabs right on the home page, and there's a budget update tab. You will have access to a lot more than what we're seeing this morning, because again, we covered that over probably 2.5 hours over 2 meetings in August. One of those meetings was dedicated to something we've been doing over the last decade. Every 3 years or so, we perform a comprehensive peer analysis. So the 10 communities listed on the bottom of the slide were selected as peer communities of the village. We think there's a lot of value in comparing various financial metrics within Carroll Stream to what our neighboring communities are doing. So most of these are neighboring communities, but they were really selected based on the demographic information, median home value, median household income, those types of things that make them similar to Carroll Stream. So we like to benchmark ourselves against this peer group to see how we're doing, what makes Carroll Stream unique from the peer group, what are some of the differences. And you'll see some of the charts from some of those studies, but again, this is a pretty abbreviated and high-level conversation we're having today. On the left-hand side is total governmental revenues for fiscal year 2018 for Carroll Stream, and then on the right side, the peer group in aggregate. Looking at these graphs in terms of the revenue sources, it's very clear that the main difference between Carroll Stream and the peer group is the property tax. So of these 10 peer communities in 2018, 1 in every $4 comes from property tax and helps support their budget. The fact that that piece of pie, that blue piece, is not in Carroll Stream's revenue portfolio, lack of a different, better term, I guess, all of the other pieces of pie on Carroll Stream's chart are a little bit larger because we don't have that piece. So sales taxes, for instance, are 44% of all dollars that are produced. And you remember at the onset I said sales taxes have declined in each of the last 2 years. Current year, that's obviously providing a lot of stress on the village budget. As an example, too, Carroll Stream is a lot more susceptible to volatility that we're seeing. So if we kept the math easy, and I can only do easy math, people know, $44 of every 100, if we had a 10% decrease in sales taxes, Carroll Stream is losing $4.40, while our peers are losing only $3. They have that property tax buffer, which is basically 100% of that gets collected, whatever's levied at the county level. So that there's about 47% variance in those two numbers that Carroll Stream, it's kind of like whiplash in terms of the budget. So property tax would provide a lot of stability for operations. This chart shows total governmental revenues on a per capita base among our community peers for 2018. So all dollars raised to support governmental services, Carroll Stream is the blue bar here. We've conducted this peer study 4 times now since 2011. And Carroll Stream's position on this graph has not changed in each of those 4 analyses. So Carroll Stream produces on a per capita basis, second to lowest revenues of all of the peers in the study set. And the yellow bars portion of each of the chart represents that community's portion of property taxes that come part of their total revenues as well. Looking at sales taxes, I've shown here a decade's worth of net changes year over year in Carroll Stream property taxes, sales taxes. The sales taxes produced by our peer group, our 10 community peer group, and the whole of DuPage County. Kind of interesting to note, the red numbers are obviously negatives, decline years. 2009 at the bottom of the chart was really the low point of the Great Recession in terms of economic downturn. Each time you see Carroll Stream in negative numbers, we're usually losing, if you will, by a significant margin over our peers in the county as a whole. However, when times are good, we tend to outpace our peers and the county in terms of sales tax production. So the 17.9, I think we had a very large retailer come into town that particular year, but the 6.7, 11.2, 8.8% have been very good for our revenue growth in those years. But as you see, it's also starting to turn against us in the last 2 years and in our current fiscal year. Just moving to the expenditure side of the budget, 76% of all operating revenues are people costs. It shouldn't be, hopefully, too surprising for people to understand that in the municipal sector, staffing and service are the predominant expenditures for operations. The remaining 24% I've kind of characterized as tools that help staff do their jobs and deliver services to the public. So in the other 24% category, we have contractual services, commodities like road salt for the winters, capital equipment, this is police cars, public works bucket trucks, and you name it, when they need to be replaced, those come out of that. So that helps, those are the tools that help staff deliver services to the public. We'll take a glimpse into the payroll and benefits side of the equation first. Obviously, it's the most important. It's 76% of the whole piece of pie. And these are various categories of payroll and benefits. And what I've done is I've computed the average annual increase in each of these categories over the last 5 fiscal years using actual data. Salary growth, and this is total payroll growth, which I'm going to be very careful in distinguishing this. This is not individual pay raises for employees. It is that plus other things such as accrued payment of benefits upon retirement, and as the board will attest, we've seen many, many retirements in the last several years. Another thing it also includes are positions that have been reinstated from the Great Recession. Today, the village is still 6 positions below where we were at the onset of the Great Recession. So we're not larger than we were prior to the Great Recession. We're still a little bit smaller. But following the Great Recession, there was a precipitous drop in staffing positions because obviously we needed to try and right the ship and match what revenues were coming in. So that total 4.5% annual payroll growth salaries really represents the things I mentioned earlier, plus a number of positions that were hired back following the recovery out of the Great Recession.
John, just like I did the previous 2 meetings, I just want to confirm, because on social media, some people believe that 4.5 is each employee gets a 4.5% raise every year, and that is not true. Is that correct?
That is not true. There are a number of different employment groups. We have 3 represented employee groups, and then there's a non-union group, and they each, depending on how the contract is resolved, that's what is called for in each of those contracts or in the non-union pay plan.
Okay.
Yes. Overtime and FICA benefits at 5.4% growth and 4.8% growth actually follow the salary growth intuitively, it would grow at a similar rate as the salaries. We have actually had some success in controlling health benefit costs, just 0.2% each year over the last 5 years, which is, I guess, pretty good. I mean, try and control the cost of health care. Some of the things we've done to help influence that, we're using more part-time employees presently. We've been doing this for a number of years. I just had a full-time employee retire in the last fiscal year, and we basically hired 2 part-time employees that don't get benefits, they don't get pension benefits, and they don't get health insurance benefits. So that's one way we've been trying to control the growth of health costs and the bottom line. Our workers' compensation and unemployment costs are fairly low, and it's actually a pretty low percentage, about 0.3% growth each year. And then we come to pensions. Whether you've been following this at the state level or local level, a lot has been written, obviously, about pensions, state pensions. The village is required to participate in 2 pension plans. If you're not a sworn police officer, which you're required to participate in a police pension plan, if you work more than 1,000 hours in a year, you're required to participate in what's called IMRF. It's called the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. And again, coming back to my previous example, if I'm able to work part-time staff, we actually have positions that work 19 hours per week, so we could stay below the 1,000-hour threshold. So we're not required to enroll them in IMRF. One way we've been able to keep the cost of IMRF in check at 2.6% is that, as well as the funding level of IMRF is a lot stronger than many of the police and fire systems in Illinois. And when we come to police pension fund, it's 9.4% per year. That is very difficult to keep pace with. It's a required cost. This board doesn't determine what the benefits are for retired police officers. They have no say in it other than Springfield dictates what the benefit structure is, requires the village to pay for it. If we were to even try and skip those payments, there's legislation that was passed in 2011 that now pension boards can actually direct the state to pay the pension fund directly. So they can intercept village revenues and pay it in full. So it's got to be paid regardless. And there's endless debate on the pension question. I'm not going to get too much more in detail on that. I anticipate there may be some questions about pensions as we go through, as we get into questions. So overall, with all of those factors, except again 3/4 of the entire operating budget, total payroll and benefit costs have grown by about 4.5% in each year over the last 5 years. Pretty quickly on the non-payroll costs, again about 25% or one in every $4, 24%. The growth in these costs has been much slower. It's been limited to 0.6% per year, so it's a little bit more contained. I've got a graph here that shows it fairly flat. There are a couple of things in the last couple of years that have influenced that. As you probably know, we were in an alternate location out on North Avenue for about 18 months. So the rent payments, we had to pay rent to rent those facilities while construction was being conducted here. Those have influenced those costs. If you take those out of the equation, it's practically flat in terms of the 24% portion of the budget. So just in recap, the payroll and benefit costs up about 4.5% per year. The non-payroll costs of 0.6%. In aggregate, village operating expenses have been growing at about 3.6% per year. So here's where it becomes a problem. General fund revenues have only grown at 2.1% per year. So what this has done is basically, while we were able to keep a balanced budget, and we do reduce the budget every year, we have to cut back in order to make sure that it's balanced. This continuing trend of revenues not keeping pace with expenditures, and we work from both sides of the budget, I mean, in terms of trying to keep it balanced, 2020, our current year budget, is the first budget in 6 years where we haven't actually had a budgeted surplus in the general fund, our general operating fund. Basically because revenues have slowed and expenditures have outpaced, that gap, that buffer is pretty much gone at this point. So all we have are reserves to rely on if we head into a recession, or that's the only safety net left in terms of general operations. Okay, I'm going to transition now to that, if you remember the orange bubble on the bottom of the screen, the capital improvement program. So that, in terms of daily operations and then capital improvement, those are probably, in a nutshell, two of the main functions of village services. Again, as I mentioned, we have a 5-year comprehensive capital improvement program. Projected out, the chart here, and I apologize if you can't see the numbers very well, but the red numbers are the ones of concern. So in our 5-year capital improvement plan, based on current revenues, these are reserve balances. We won't even make it into, we won't even be able to finish the 3rd year of our 5-year plan based on currently programmed projects. In total, for this 5-year period, the capital improvement program requires about $5.6 million in annual funding to sustain itself as it's currently programmed. I mentioned at the onset that the capital improvement fund has historically not had any dedicated sources of revenue and has been reliant on general fund surpluses to fund it. I have listed about $2.5 million per year in dedicated revenues here. So I want to be clear on this. Last June, the village implemented a local gasoline tax. That produces about $1 million a year. So this was one effort to try and curb to make sure that the capital fund had some funding, because again, we haven't been able to make those transfers in the last 2 years. So that's $1 million of the $2.5 million. The village also receives about $1 million in state motor fuel taxes. Again, that's distributed by the state of Illinois based on per capita, by population. So that's $2 million. And there's an additional $500,000 added to that, stemming from the state's recent July 1st, as you well know, state doubled its motor fuel taxes July 1st, from 19 cents unleaded, or for non-diesel, I believe, to 38 cents per gallon. The state actually agreed to share a portion of that funding with local governments in Illinois. So $500,000 is our estimate of what those new motor fuel taxes will provide. September, actually, we received our first payment, so I want to make sure we hold the state to that and make sure that those funds can continue. So we have about $2.5 million of dedicated funding in the capital program presently. So with $5.6 million in expenditures, we have a gap of about $3.1 million, or based on the previous slide, we'll basically run out of reserves by year 3 of the 5-year plan. So that's why we're here today, in large part. We're not in crisis today, but where things are trending, we need to make sure we stay ahead of this. We always tend to deal with problems as they present themselves rather than waiting until it's too late and it becomes a bigger problem. I threw this slide in just as an example, and one of the things, again, I think is a great source of community pride. It is a great source of pride. This is one reason why I love working in Carroll Stream. This is general obligation debt. This is debt for our peer groups, and Carroll Stream, you notice on the far left, has 0. We are very different from our peer group in that we use a funding philosophy for capital. We call it pay-as-you-go. And that's been the village's history. We have not entered into debt to build roads, to do storm sewer improvement projects, or this building was entirely done from reserve balances that have been saved. Just like we do at home, we save for that new refrigerator or whatever it is, and then we buy it. So if you look at some of these communities, $20 million, $30 million, $40 million, $50 million in debt, some of these communities have And on the high end, the yellow portion or the orange portion of the graph represents interest on that debt. Some of these communities have $10 million in interest payments due on debt. So there is nothing cheaper than paying as you go, because you're not paying bondholders $10 million. You can put that $10 million back into constructing roads. So that's again, and that based on this presentation, based on some of the financial planning we've been doing, we want to stay pay as you go. We want to continue that, and that would be how I would see it going forward. Even if there were a property tax or not, we want to stay debt free. Okay, moving into the some of the property tax information. This is an example of what a median home value of $231,000, I got this from the Census Bureau, so I believe the median home value in Carroll Stream is $231,000 and change. Across our peer group, what those homeowners would pay to their municipality this year. So it ranges from $205 in Woodridge to almost $1,100 in Streamwood. The average is $572 per median value homeowner, and that's the portion of the tax bill that goes to fund local community, the village services. I put some fire helmets, hats, and park bench on here. In doing these studies and these community comparisons, we recognize half of these towns have a village fire department. We have a fire district that's separate. So anytime in my research that I saw a property tax levy that was specific to fire service or park services, I removed that from that. Otherwise, those values would be inflated. So I'm trying to achieve as apples to apples as we can in terms of comparison on current property tax burden. This next slide shows the total community tax rate. So this is villages, libraries, park districts, schools, forest preserve, and county government. Everything, if you look at your tax bill, there's probably 15 or 16 line items of detailed information on each taxing jurisdiction. So Carroll Stream falls roughly in the middle third of the peer group, and is slightly above at 9.29% tax rate for most homes in Carroll Stream, just a little bit above the average of 8.95%. And finally, what does it mean to me? I think that's probably why most of you are here. What is the impact of a proposed property tax? So this example uses all of 2018's assessed value data, the tax bill you're paying in this current year. So obviously, if the village did a levy, it'd be based on next year's values, but we're using the most current information we have. For every $1 million that the village were to consider levying, this chart shows the impact based on various property market values. So for that median home value of $231,000, for every $1 million levied, that impact would be about $61 for that homeowner. In terms of the property tax levy timeline, it's October. We began really discussing this in August. There are a number of actions that the village would have to take to implement a property tax for next year for tax bills that are released May 1 of 2020. The village board, whether you know this or not, is required to actually adopt the library's property tax levy request. So we have done that. This body has done that every year since the library has levied taxes. But the village levy has obviously been zero since the 70s. October, later this month, we would entertain a resolution that's required by law, making an estimate of the determined amounts needed for property taxes. And once you do that, you would hold a public hearing in November, and then the village would be able to adopt a final property tax levy. The DuPage County requires it be filed with them by the last Tuesday in December. That completes my portion. Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, John. I noticed you got through that a lot faster than you did the first time and the second time.
Practice.
Brian, I'm going to start with Mr. Bender. Would you like to take the podium and ask questions? Being you were the last person in, you know how it is, you'd be paying the bill if we were eating.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. And maybe more importantly, thank you for being sensitive to all of the citizens in this town. We appreciate it. I just took a few notes that, in respect to your comments and the great presentation. I think the first one that comes to mind, and this is very forward, is we have the Hopes and Aspiration Fund. In other words, the bubble and the transfer of funds if there is a surplus. So first, from an accounting standpoint and moving forward, I would recommend that we eliminate it as a Hopes and Aspiration Fund. And we compartmentalize in future, we compartmentalize the building fund and the roads, et cetera, and actually budget for them, as opposed to hoping that we have a surplus that moves forward. I think in Carol Stream, I pray that we never eliminate the pay-as-we-go. I think it's a fantastic thing, and I think it's a lot easier to do if we, moving forward, look at our road improvement plans, our sewers, et cetera, things that we're going to budget or hope to budget for in the future, and we eliminate that bubble that we hope that it's a transfer. Secondly, I tell you, contrary to a lot of towns, if you look at other budgets when it comes to staffing, kudos to this town. I mean, it's been extraordinarily fiscally responsible, and the fact that we are below what we were, Great Recession, is extraordinary. And I think if you compare us to a number of towns, that's not the case. I question what we are doing for really working to get more business to come in. You know, it's a two-sided plan here. We're working to consider a property tax or an increase in sales tax potentially, or a combination of the two. But what are we doing to, in every way possible, forecast and budget and plan for additional stimulation of business growth in this town? I've lived in a lot of towns in my life, and no other town has done a better job of urban planning and separation and management so that there's not a Walgreens in my subdivision corner. But I look at a lot of the growth and the business growth, and I have a company that's gone from a 30,000 square foot facility to a 100,000 square foot facility in Carroll Stream, and I'm proud of it. And the city has been fantastic. And now, what are we going to do, and what are we doing to stimulate that? And if in fact we're stimulating it and we're working to really build that growth, how does that impact this budget? How does it truly impact as a forecast? You said it's approximately a $3 million gap. How is that $3 million gap affected by forecast of additional business from our community in trying to stimulate growth? Are there other things besides the property tax that could in fact impact that number to reduce it? Unfortunately, I'd like to say that the trend's going to change, but I'm not any more convinced than you are that the trend is going to change. So what's our stimulus to try to reduce that gap other than property tax? What about a compromise and it actually be a small, Naperville calls it their fine arts tax? What about a compromise that we add a quarter of a cent into sales tax as a compromise between the two? And I think the last thing that comes to mind for me is when you drew the line on what those additional property taxes, or what that property tax could be to homeowners if you implement this plan. I would recommend that the tax, whether it's popular or not, the median is at $234, right?
Yes, sir.
So the idea, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is that this increased property tax, or this additional tax that is new to us, only be something that is for residents that have homes that are above that median. And I say that for obvious reasons. I think there are a number of folks below that median right now I think they are typically and often the ones that struggle to pay all sorts of other bills besides the property tax that we're considering imposing. But I would recommend that we change the scale and consider that property tax be implemented, if we do so, to those that have homes that are above that median value. And give some relief to those that are below it.
We can actually answer a couple of your questions because you've asked them as questions.
Absolutely.
John is looking at you, and he's
got some
anxious-
answers.
Anxious to answer some of them.
Just to your last point, the DuPage County distributes all of the levy requests. So the village cannot request that a property tax be applied to some properties versus others. So think of, again, the community as a pie. It all comes from all of the tax value that's spread throughout the entire community. So businesses, residences, it basically, the village would ask for a specific dollar amount in its levy, and the county would distribute that across all of the parcels, taxable parcels within the community based on their value. That's the only way they do it. So they can't, I appreciate the idea, but the county will not extend that to certain valued properties versus lower. But it's just not.
Or we can tax an industrial building and not
Correct.
a residential.
Right, no, I mean, and I appreciate that. I think that we should consider looking at other methods to, other creative methods in our town to try to help support families that we want to not hinder their ability to live in Carroll Stream.
Howard, I'm going to ask John Baytek, our Economic Development Director, to address, you've asked, what are we doing?
Don
It's
Bastian.
John Bastion, I'm sorry. It's very early on Sunday. I apologize, Don. You just became part of your family, John.
Excuse me. So there are numerous things that we do to promote economic development and to try to bring businesses to Carroll Stream. First of all, we maintain relationships with numerous industrial and commercial brokers. We're on the phone or meeting with these folks pretty much on a weekly basis. We've been working to strategically annex properties around the perimeter of Carroll Stream in recent years, and we've had some success doing that. This has allowed us to bring in some additional tax revenue generating properties into the village. We do target specific businesses that we would like to see come to Carroll Stream to vacant properties or vacant spaces and buildings. We're active with various economic development organizations in the region and the state. We participate in Choose DuPage events and work with them as a partner on promoting business in Carroll Stream. Kind of in a bigger picture way, the village also places a very high priority on maintaining its infrastructure, streets, and having an industrial park with really excellent infrastructure is another way that we try to support businesses and make our community attractive to businesses moving into the village.
Don, could you also address over the last, and we brought this up at the last couple of meetings, but where our vacancy rate was in our industrial park? Because I don't think that people understand how large our industrial park is and how the vacancy rate in the last several years has really changed significantly for the better.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we have about 22 million square feet of industrial space, generally east of Gary Avenue. And coming out of the Great Recession, we had a vacancy rate of approximately 20%, a little bit higher than that. And at this point, that level is right about 5% or maybe a little bit below that. So you almost get to a point where you're always going to have a little bit of vacant space just with people coming and going. So, you know, getting down below 3 or 4% is almost, I mean, that's just kind of a normal, you know, steady state operating condition in a good economy. So that's about where we're at right now.
Thank you.
And may I say something? Thank you for your comments, Mr. Bender. With regards to commercial, you see the way commercial things are going nowadays. I mean, you know, you look at Stratford Mall, and I mean, it's a ghost town. Charlestown's even worse. So having the industrial park is actually the way of the world now because everything's internet sales. And so many of our highest sales tax generators are internet sales in the industrial park itself. The positive about having a property tax is where there's a vacant building and we're not getting any sales tax because there's no businesses in there, guess what? The owner of that building still pays a property tax. Enacting a property tax will give that business or that building owner more incentive to try to get it filled too, which is also a plus, so.
I apologize. I am not opposed to the property tax. I think it's probably the most fiscally responsible thing we could do right now. I think that there's a way to manage it, and I think I do think it's the right thing to do. It does put an additional incentive on, for that exact reason, puts an additional heavy incentive on the property owner to avoid its own vacancies.
Thank you.
Also, I know that you mentioned that you thought it would be a good idea to maybe raise the sales tax 0.25%, I believe you said. And we have already raised it 2 times. And we don't want to be so high where businesses don't want to come in. So there's that fine balancing act. And so, I mean, we already raised it twice, and I don't know if 0.25% would be the answer either.
And Howard, the other thing I'd like to mention is you said you'd like to see us try and think creatively outside of the box. Have we exhausted every measure? This property tax discussion has been ongoing. And it didn't just start in August. It started over the last several years, and the board's position has been that we are going to do everything we can to avoid a property tax for as long as we possibly can. So that's why, and I know the timing on some of this in the last year hasn't been the best with what's happened with what's going on in Springfield, and we didn't know back then what was going to be happening as far as new taxes and things that they were going to be doing. But we brought in a gas tax, and we brought in an alcohol tax that we just put into effect. And the thought process behind that is, and we've raised our sales tax. The thought process behind that is to not put 100% of the burden on the residents. So we are a pass-through town. We are very much a commuter pass-through town. So people stop at gas stations. They'll stop at the convenience stores. They're going to stop at Caputo's on their way home. They're going to stop and they're going to spend money in Carroll Stream, and they don't live in Carroll Stream. So they're actually helping put money into our funds, and it's not 100% on our residents. And that's really where we've been trying to get creative and try to think outside of the box. What else can we do? As unpopular as it was, we had to raise the vehicle sticker. The first time we raised the vehicle sticker in 2 decades. And we tried to be very aware of, yes, it's not going to be a popular decision, but we needed to try and make up for some of the lost revenue that we have had. The other thing is in social media is good and bad. There's been a lot of misconceptions on social media that the first thing that the village has done is we put on some kind of a tax or we raise some kind of a fee. And in reality, the very first thing that we do is we tell our staff, go back to the budget and make cuts. And after those cuts, then we look and see, what do we still need? And we have cut a lot out of our budget. We hold our staff very accountable for every penny that is spent. We're not that taxing body where they get a blank check to do whatever they want to. Phil Modaf, our Public Works Director, can explain to you some of the cost-saving measures we've been trying to do in Public Works as far as our vehicle fleet in Public Works. Phil, if you could talk about that.
Sure. Vehicles are a critical part of our operation, especially in the winter. The trucks we have to purchase are large and expensive. The largest dump trucks we have today can range between $180,000 and $200,000. Now, we have a relatively small community, so those trucks don't get a lot of miles. We do use them throughout the year, but still, we may have a 15-year-old truck with 25,000 miles on it. In the past, we would simply retire that vehicle because a lot of the components, including the box that holds the salt or spoil on a water main break, simply rust through. Salt eats metal. So one of the things we did was we started experimenting 3 years ago, and we're now finishing our 5th and 6th trucks. Rather than purchasing a new one, we spend anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000 to have the truck rehabilitated. We send it out in May. We expect to get 2 of them back here by November 1st, and they'll have a whole new box. Sometimes we can afford to put a stainless steel box on, which will not only last the rest of the life of that truck, but we'll take it off and we'll put it on the next truck. We also take all the hydraulics out. We strip, sandblast the bottom of it and repaint. We put in some updated components perhaps in the cab for the drivers. So we're spending between a quarter and a third of the purchase of a new truck on a rehab truck. Our goal is to get at least 10 more years out of that truck. And then when we're done using it, it will have some value on the resale market. Other things we do is when it's time to retire another vehicle, say a lift truck that we use for streetlights or tree trimming, or the trucks that jet and suck out the debris from sewers. We look at combining services where we now have 2 lift trucks, one of which will probably be retired soon. We had to replace our largest one a couple years ago. I challenged our employees to design that truck to serve both services, both street light work and tree trimming. So half the truck is dedicated to each. When that other smaller truck needs to get retired in a couple of years, we're not going to replace it. So we spend a little bit more on a new truck, but we won't replace the smaller one. A couple of years ago, we needed both the flusher truck and the truck that sucks the debris out of pipes. We replaced both of those with one truck, a combination unit. Instead of spending over $400,000, we spent about $330,000. We also contract for services. Street sweeping. We have to street sweep 8 to 9 times a year, especially this time of year as the leaves start to fall. We used to own and operate 2 sweepers. Those trucks are quite expensive, and you can imagine they're very maintenance heavy. The brushes, the pumps, the hoses, it's quite expensive. So we maintain 1 sweeper now for emergencies. If we have a maintenance, we can clean up after it, there's a spill somewhere, the 4th of July parade, but when that one's ready to retire, we may not replace it. But we contract out. So we bring someone in who's made the investment in the trucks and the people. They come in, they sweep, they go home. I don't have to worry about workers' comp or fuel prices or vehicle maintenance. We do the same thing with tree trimming. We do have employees that are trained in tree trimming. We can do low-hanging branches. We can remove smaller trees that maybe are damaged in a windstorm or get run into by a car in an accident. But for our zoned tree trimming, where we trim 1/6 of our town every year, we bring in a contractor. And they can get it done in 2 weeks. It used to take us the better part of the summer, on and off and on and off and on and off. And summer's not a great time to trim trees anyway. But we can't really trim trees in the winter because we're plowing snow. So again, we bring them in, and they're very expensive equipment, and they're employees, and it's very dangerous work. They do the work, and then they go. And we don't have to worry about those expenses. We're in an agreement with the county to mow their rights-of-way. And they actually pay us to do that. Now, we're just doing a little better than breaking even on that cost, but what we get is better service. County has a lot of right-of-way across the entire county, and they can't mow it every week like we can. So they pay us, we mow it once a week. So the streets, Gary Avenue and County Farm Road and Army Trail that look so nice in our towns and are adjacent to businesses and their appearance is important, we're able to mow on a weekly basis, and somebody else is paying us to do it. We hire seasonal employees to mow grass. We mow grass from, just like you do, probably the 1st of April through the end of October. And instead of assigning full-time employees to that, I run an 8-person crew, 2 full-timers and 6 seasonals. Now, sometimes they're college students, and I can't have them for that entire period, but I'm paying them $10, $10.50 an hour, rather than $30 an hour plus benefits for full-timers. We also do group purchasing. So we use state contracts or even national contracts to find vehicles, tools, supplies, anything we can do to save a little bit of money, and quite frankly, the staff time and having to do the bid process. We're able to do a joint bid with them. I just want to talk about winter a little bit. In addition to the Illinois EPA requiring that we reduce our amount of chlorides, salt, that goes in the waterways eventually, because we put salt on the road, it turns into a slurry and then mixes with the snow, and it goes down the storm sewer and ends up in the creek. And it goes to the West Branch and then makes its way all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. We're required to reduce that amount. You may see us out spraying the street with a liquid before a winter storm. That allows us to prevent a bond between the snow and the pavement, which means we don't have to put as much salt down, which means we're not putting as much in the storm sewer. We also are very aggressive in coating salt with something called organic materials, typically a beet juice extract. It smells a little bit sweet, but it's also tacky. It sticks to the salt. It also makes the salt sit better on the pavement. So as it gets spun out on the street, it normally would bounce. Studies have shown you can lose up to 30% of your salt just from the bounce. With this tackiness, we cut that significantly. When we're losing less, we're using less. So we're very aggressive in our snow plowing efforts and trying to reduce our salt, both on the cost side and on the environmental side. And by the way, we purchase our salt through a joint purchasing contract with DuPage County, and that really helps us stabilize those costs. Finally, you've probably noticed we change out LED, or we change out streetlight fixtures to LED fixtures. We've done, by the end of this year, we will have done 900 of approximately 1,800 streetlights in town. And we know for a fact, because we didn't take the manufacturer's word for it, we checked our own electric bills, they reduce our costs by 50% in consumption. We reduce kilowatt hours by 50%. And we also get grants either through the state or ComEd for the purchase of the fixtures. Last year, we purchased 197 fixtures for $26,000, and we reduced our cost through a grant by $19,000. We spent about $7,000 for just under 200 new fixtures. This year, we bought 300, and we spent about $14,000 when they really cost $40,000. So we really look at every opportunity we can to save money. And I know you asked me about vehicles, but I couldn't stop myself.
We really came today to, and I appreciate that. You had 5 minutes that you were, it took us 45 minutes to answer. But we got really off the path, and it's nice because Mary and all of us know that everybody here works really hard, and they all want it, they can't wait to speak. So they could tell you what they've been doing to try and make this so this didn't happen. So if we do this, we'll be here until midnight, the way we're going. So we have to take another question. Phil, there's no question in my mind or this board's mind or anybody that knows you're doing a phenomenal job with what you got to work with. Yes, sir. State your name and your address, please.
Mr. Mayor, if you may, before
Yes.
this gentleman speaks, I want to thank everyone for being here. Unfortunately, I have to leave to go to work, but I want to thank everyone for being here. I'm sorry I have to leave, but I appreciate your questions, and I will watch the rest of this on the video to see what everybody has said. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Geezer, for being here.
Thank you. Name is Mike Berardi, live on Basswood Court. Been a resident of Carroll Stream over 25 years. I have 2 questions, but John, if you don't mind, could you put on a slide that you had on page 19? Thank you. The one thing that concerns me is I don't see our home values going up as much as, we all like them to be. A couple of neighbors have sold their homes, and we're disappointed in the prices that they got. And this is not a result of, Carroll Stream probably helps keep it up while the state real estate taxes are keeping it down. Is my tax bill, I think it's a modest home, is getting close to $10,000, which I think would be kind of a mental barrier for selling my house when the time comes. Quick question on this. It says, I looked at this and I thought, my levy would be about $75 extra, but it says for each $1 million levied, how much do you plan on levying? Because that'll be the real hit on my
Well,
tax
I'm going
bill.
to try and answer that question, is we don't know yet, because we're not sure, and our budget process doesn't even start for what, how many more months?
It'll be starting up in November.
I mean, we're working with what we have to work with, what the state keeps taking and moving, and people moving out of, not moving out of Carroll Stream, but moving their billing department out. I'm gonna tell you, we lost over $1 million from one client that was in the industrial park. They didn't move, the billing department moved to another town. So that million is gone. We really don't have, we're looking at a lot of options right now. What we're trying to get is feedback, hopefully, from the people in town by having these 3 meetings to what's acceptable, what you can live with, what we can take away. We talked about vehicle stickers going away, so that's important. The vehicle stickers are, almost all of them are bought by the residents, not by the industrial park. If we had our choice, the industrial park would be taking this hit because the residents don't deserve it. But we can't do that. I thought of that, and we talked to the lawyers 2 years ago. That should have been what we did, because that's the problem. The problem's the internet sales. The problem is every time you take your phone out, we lose utility taxes. Every time you put solar panels on your roof, it's great, your meter runs backwards, our meter stops running completely for our tax that we get. Those are the things that we have to face, where it's all good for everybody. My wife spends a lot of money on the internet. We don't make a lot of money off the internet. So it's unfortunate that that's what we do. I mean, that's how we got to where we are today, and is the trends change and things in this world are changing, and that's where we are. So you want to, what was,
Wild guess?
you know what, I don't know, we're probably looking at between $3, maybe $4 million in that area.
Okay.
We had a span of where we wanted to go. I think the high was
3.1 to 6 is,
3.1 to 6. So, I mean, what we don't want to do is we don't want to have to come back next year and say, we need to go up again. We want to put this to bed. And then we look at, and there's things, I mean, I'm not going to say we're going to do what Rosemont does, because I can't say that. But there is things that we could abate, there's things that we could make better for everybody. I mean, you only see what's on the surface. I mean, could we cut more? I don't know where we would cut unless I start letting police officers go or public works guys.
I understand, but the hit, now that I hear that number, it's not $75. This is really anywhere from $225 to maybe $500 to me. And on top of the increases that the school districts already nail us with anyway. But personally speaking, we've already bought a house in another state. We're committed to living here for another year for personal reasons. I hate to leave. I like Carroll Stream, like the area, like everything about it, but the real estate taxes are just, I can't do it anymore. My wife and I are retired, that's it. And this is gonna be another big hit on it, which will probably mean we'll move, maybe look at moving sooner than later.
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
So, because we want to put one on now, you came here to voice your opinion. I don't know how to do this and be nice to
That's
taxing
okay.
bodies, not to you. Did you go to the fire district, the library, the park district, and complain that your taxes were going to go up every time they raise their taxes every year?
No,
Okay.
I don't always know when to,
I mean, all at once, because we talked about it, everybody is up in arms. And when you look at where we are in that middle area compared to the other towns with not having a property tax for us, we're right in the middle. I mean, the time to complain would have been when the school was raising, but I have a different opinion. I don't want you to think that I'm telling you should have went there and complained. We have the best school system that I could see any place. I've been here 44 years. My kids all went through the school system. Rick Geezer left just now. He grew up in the school system. Joe Brynick's sitting in the back, our old village manager. He went through the school system. A lot of them went through the school system. Best parks, best library, best run library. He just got up and walked out, one of the library guys, because I said that. He probably upset because I said that. But they could have spent $30 million to build a library back 8 years ago. They didn't do that. Put it on hold. They still own the piece of property over on Coon Road. I mean, it amazes me that all this time that people have been, no one says nothing. And I've told a lot of people, go to the school board and complain, but your kids will be idiots. We got good teachers, really. I mean, I'm happy with the way my kids were educated. If you don't get educated in this town, it's because that kid don't want to get educated or parents don't care. They just let them go to school and it's fine. But I mean, it's all come down to what we want to do now after incorporated in 1959 is that everybody's up in arms because we're trying to raise some money to make it stay. The quality of life that we have here in this town, to me, is fantastic. I call it Mayberry, except my police all have bullets in their guns. I mean, I'm proud to live here. When people say, you live in Carroll Stream, we're in the top 100 every year for the safest cities. We're in the top, Crane had a thing in the newspaper. What was it? Will somebody put their house up for sale in Carroll Stream? I mean, houses are in demand here in Central Park, the 55 and over community. I don't know if they ever go up for sale because as soon as somebody says they're retired and moving away, they're all retirees. The house is gone before they ever even goes on the market. I mean, yeah, we have houses for sale, but I mean, when you look at them, your house, you said your neighbors' houses weren't valued like they thought they were. When I'm selling my house, I hope I get a lot more money for it. What's realistic is whoever will pay for it. But it bothers me that no one's said nothing through all these years about taxes every year going up at the fire district. And here's a fireman, but I'm going to tell you what, when I'm grabbing my chest, I feel good that they're coming because they got the best trained, the best equipment. I'm not sticking up for them. I live here because I feel safe. When 911 is hit in the industrial park, the police, the firemen, everybody's there quick. I mean, those are the things that you have to look at in a community, not because I'm the mayor. I bought a place out of here 20 years ago. I should have retired 15 years ago. I ain't going nowhere. I love this town. I'll stay here until probably the day that I die, to be honest with you. Not to be mayor that long, hopefully, but I will not live this town because of the people that live in this town. So I hope that answers your question. It's kind of like I get on a tangent because a lot of people are complaining to us, but this isn't something that we just woke up and said, hey, Mary, you want to put a property tax on? John, what do you want to do? Let's put a property. I've been saying this for over 5 years. 5 years, if we go back and pull the minutes from the meeting, I thought we should have did it. In '07, when I took over as mayor, it was a disaster. And '08 was a disaster. We had floods, we had 100-year floods back to back. I mean, all of us were out, Mary throwing sandbags 2 at a time. I mean, we did what we had to do. So, I mean, this town is a little different. I mean, we went all this time without having a property tax. You think we want to put one on? You know what you're going to pay? I got $1 million building in the industrial park. I know what my house is worth. I'm going to have to pay about 8 or 9 times what you're paying just on my building. I mean, I'm not complaining about it. It is what it is. And no one in that building's ever going to go to school in my building. I hire people that are in Carroll Stream. If I could hire, most of my employees are from Carroll Stream. I mean, I hope that kind of answers your question. I feel bad that you'd leave. I feel bad that anybody would leave. But your problem is my problem, is Springfield. That's the problem. And until they clean that cesspool out in Springfield, I'm not welcome in Springfield because the way I'm talking right now, that's how I talk when I go down there. I don't have any friends down there.
Yeah.
So,
First of all, I don't blame anybody here. It's just that my real life is my expenses go up. I don't have a way of increasing my income. You do. Everybody else does. We're retired. That's my situation. Okay?
believe me, we understand that.
And the other question was, in the industrial park, what taxes does the industrial properties pay? I know they pay sales tax, but do they pay any property tax at all?
That's another problem that we have. How many health clubs have opened up? You know what we get from a health club? Here, I went to a ribbon cutting about 3 or 4 weeks ago. This is a classic. They put solar panels on the roof. I got all excited. I'm thinking, man, live, this is good. So the guy, I'm looking through the warehouse, they got all these stacked up. Those all sale? Yeah. He said, all of those are going out. We're putting them up. Okay. So what do you charge? About $30,000. I'm thinking, man, at $30,000 and we're going to get the sales tax. What do you pay us on that? Nothing. So the Carroll Stream, we don't get nothing? He said, no, you don't get anything out of that because it's the solar panels and it's done. However it's done, they don't have to pay tax on it. I said to him, why am I here? I'm here to cut a ribbon to welcome you to my town. You don't give us a nickel. I don't collect any property tax. You ain't gonna hire anybody, because most of the people were from other areas. They don't live here, and it's like, I wanted to leave. I mean, that's how I'm offended when people come in, they want to open up more and more and more health clubs. How does that affect our library when they open up a health club? Not at all. How does it affect the Park District? It kills them. We got 3 schools for kids right now, and a lot of that stuff went through the Park District, where the younger kids would go. Now we got 3 schools for the young kids. We have Goddard, which is on one end of the town, the southeast end. We have now the new one, Penrose, that's opening up by Jewel. I mean, and we still have the original. So that's 3. The Park District, they have to continue to raise the rates because they have to have the money. If more people went in and took the programs, they wouldn't have to do that. I'm not defending them, but I'm saying through the years, they kept raising, and nobody seemed to say anything other than when the library was going to build that big library. That was a disaster.
Sorry, Mayor,
I'm
still
going
don't
to answer your
understand.
question.
Do the industrial park, do the properties there pay any property?
They
They
pay
do.
property tax just like you do. None of it comes to the village.
Right.
But they pay the school, the same percentage or whatever that the homeowners do. I will say this, with a village property tax, the industrial park would cover about 40% of what we would get.
Okay, so this does apply to the industrial?
Oh,
park.
absolutely.
I didn't get
I
that.
wish we could just put it on the industrial park. And I mean, I have a lot of friends in the industrial park. I've been in that industrial park over 20 years with my business. And I mean, I meet with them, I'm part of the chamber. I try to attend most of the Rotary meetings if I could. I mean, I get it. I mean, and I think a lot of them get it. I mean, I hope that answers some of your questions. And I hate to see you leave, believe me. Eventually, we'll probably all leave, but I'm going out feet first. I can tell you. I'm going out, walking out.
All right, thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Next? Yep.
Hi, I'm Irene Montana. I live on Shawnee Drive in Carroll Stream here. Frank, you keep talking about solar panels this little bit. Is there any way the village can put in solar panels that will bring revenue back into our community? Has that even been thought of?
I see Phil as he's pressing his button already. I can tell you that, I'm going to answer that question because Phil brought it up. And we did our open house at the Water Reclamation Center yesterday. And Phil had mentioned, not because of yesterday, but a couple of years back, we're working on a program right now to try and get solar panels put at the Water Reclamation Center that'll bring that down. I mean, I don't know where we could put them on here. I mean, it's really more residential. Your meter will run backwards is what I saw Jan Smith's meter the day she put her solar panels on. There's towns getting awards for putting solar panels in their town, but it's the residents that put them in. And we probably have as many as they do, but we don't tell everybody. We don't, I mean, it's not what I can't tell you to put them on your road. And every time somebody puts solar panels on, our utility tax goes down. So the state chokes us to death, and then we're choking ourselves and don't even realize it.
Well, that's why I said maybe we can do our own solar panels for the village that would help the village somehow, you know, like do you get a percentage or something, right?
Yeah, there are 2 ways to go about solar fields. For instance, at the WRC, we could either install them and operate them ourselves and use the entire reduction in energy costs to pay off our investment, which is what we're examining right now. Or you bring in a party that builds them, owns them, operates them, and you get a reduction in your energy costs. But again, we'd be paying off either a bill we already have for electrical consumption or our investment in the solar panels. We simply, from what I know about solar energy, we simply do not have the real estate to generate enough power to then turn around, pay off our investment, and sell it back to a utility and raise significant revenue.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. If we had a very large desert in the area, maybe we could do that. We don't.
And I'm trying to understand, like, this property, is that like $100 a year? Like, I'm not saying an exact amount, I'm just saying like,
It would be yearly. Yeah, the
So-
figures that you've seen would be a yearly
And you pay your taxes.
on your property
twice.
bill.
so that would be so, I mean, I know you guys work for the village, I know. All right, and then I would like to know, like, you guys spray all the grass and junk in the, like, right, for weeds? Like, how much would you save not doing that? And not putting that chemical all over Carroll Stream? To me, I don't spray my yard. I don't care if I have weeds. Is it really important that the grass looks like a golf?
You know, I find that interesting because you don't care if you have weeds.
Yeah,
I showed you some of the complaints that we get,
oh,
that my departments have to go through. I'll go out to the house. 2 weeds in somebody's grass that lives next door that takes care of their grass is a huge thing. It's like the bomb just went off in their yard. I mean, we've been spending money to try and do natural plantings. We tried it along Coon Road. We've done all, go ahead, Phil, take it, because you're in charge of all of that.
We actually do a very limited amount of spraying. Some of our high-profile areas, the Village Hall, Town Center, where we have a lot of people for concerts, thousands and thousands of people there through the summer. We do some. But our rights-of-way, our roadsides, we don't do much until we get the complaints about the dandelions on Coon Road or the grass that grows up in the joints between the pavement and the concrete. And for some of that, we've actually trained and had certified our own applicators and operators. And we do that as cheaply as we can. But overall, as a total percentage of the property the village owns and the rights-of-way, we do very little. I would estimate off the top of my head, our expenses are in the low tens of thousands.
yeah, but that's, even if it's
And keep in mind,
5,000, that's
keep
something.
keep in mind that it's called curb appeal. I'm not a real estate person, but I hear it all the time.
Yeah,
It's what does your neighborhood look like when they pull in? What does the streets look like? What do the curbs look like? Are the sidewalks sunken? I mean, are weeds all over? People are gonna go look at his house when he puts it up for sale, and maybe the people on the right side got their garbage cans on the side of the house instead of where they should be.
yeah, but if you maintain, I mean, my yard looks nice.
Well, it's hard
I
to
mean-
maintain weeds. I mean,
We used to spray, but,
we try to do as much natural planting as we could. All the houses that were purchased by the county and the government, and when we got involved along the creek that floods so bad, those are all natural plantings. They looked like weeds at the beginning, now they're starting to bloom, and they're starting to look nice. If it was up to us, we would have liked to give the people that live on both sides, split the lot, you take that side, he could have that side. We can't do that. Once the government steps in and buys them, that's it, they could never be sold again. To me, it's useless. Now we gotta plant stuff on them, because otherwise we have to get back and keep cutting the grass. And then I'm gonna write somebody a warning ticket, not a ticket, a notice that their grass isn't right, the weeds are bad, and ours looks worse than theirs. So we can't do that. So, you have any other questions?
no,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Irene?
Thank you.
Jim, in the back, I know you were walking up when she stepped up, so. That's okay. He don't mind.
Good morning, Jim Zay, 1205 Brookstone Drive, Carroll Stream. I've been following this online and in the papers, and I've been watching it, on YouTube. And just some advice. It reminds me of a line from The Godfather. It's not personal, it's business. And it seems like you do a good job for Carroll Stream, but you're taking this very personal. I don't think anybody, if you want to show a sign of hands, anybody in the village says, please raise my taxes, they're all going to go, it's a great idea. And I think they have questions here. I think the optics is a little, that's why I think when I talk to people in the village, optics, just you have a brand-new, great city hall here, library loan, that's all at the same time. Now we're talking about raising property tax or implementing a property tax. And, you're having these meetings, but you're not telling people, like some of these people ask, what's the amount? I can see it's $3.1 million, that's minimum. But you're not saying, you know what? If we don't get this, we're gonna have to cut 5 police officers. Or we're only gonna plow you once a time during a storm. Give them an option so they know what's going on. Because if it's for me and you want to cut police, I'm going to say, no, I want to pay a property tax. Or if you're not going to do a great job like you always do on plowing, that the streets are going to be horrible, we're not going to be able to get around because we're going to have to cut public works, want to know that. I mean, give them that option at that point. You know, I know when you put that up and it's still there, I mean, it is. I mean, and I've been through this, you know, I've been on the county board a long time, and when everybody looks through the property tax in a narrow thing and go, well, it's only this amount. But like Frank says, when you go up $200, and the school districts, which are 75 to 80% of your tax bill, they go up every year. CPI is 1.9. I'm sure every district in our area is going to raise it that amount. And it goes up, and they go up $80. And the park district goes up $80, and the fire district goes up $25. Next thing you know, your amount that you think is not that much, and all of a sudden it's $700 to an average taxpayer. You know, I've been vocal. I mean, if people are skeptical, they have to be skeptical because look what happened with the park district. I mean, they went to referendum years ago and said, we're going to build all this new stuff, but we have stuff coming off debt, and we're not going to raise your property taxes. And I don't think they haven't raised their property tax since they did that referendum. You know, I've been there, and I've brought that up to them. They had a meeting 4 months ago where they were going to go out and bond again and bring in additional money on top of what they were going to do for more money. So please, when people, you know, come up here, it's not personal. I mean, we all have, you know, budgets and everything else, and it does go on. And you've done a lot. I mean, you have a real estate transfer tax, $3 per thousand that you use. You have increased your sales tax twice. I mean, that shows that you're not just not thinking about it. The things have been going bad for a while. The sales tax has been going down. I mean, the county, we're only 20% of our budget is property tax. And the county is, for the first time in 12 years, raising the property tax this year. And you think that's a lot for the county and DuPage. Since we haven't raised it so many years, it's only 1.9 million in the entire county. So, I mean, that's not a lot. As I see it, you need $3.1 million. You're getting $2.5 million for your roads, and I see your construction, but, I mean, that's $2.5 million is dedicated motor fuel tax that you can only use for your roads. That's it. So you need $3.1 million to do your storm sewers and then take care of your capital facilities. So, I mean, if that's the number you're looking at, let the people know at that point.
Let me stop you there, because being you brought it up, I don't like to answer the questions unless it's really brought up. One of the problems that we're having with this property tax increase is the staff has met, and was Joe's idea, and Bob and I were jamming one day, and Joe said, well, we should ask the trustees what they feel comfortable with. And my suggestion was, I like the idea, but not all at one time. I don't want to have to call an open meeting. So if Joe and Bob could meet with each trustee separately and give them that chart of how much from the low to the high. My problem is they were all over the ballpark. If everybody was in the middle, it would have been over with already. If they were all low, then we would have had to figure out what we have to do. So until we all sit down and we compromise, this board thinks for themselves. I don't think for them. Everybody has a different opinion of what they want to do and how we want to get it done. So that's why I'm having a hard time struggling with this, as probably everybody up here is. They all know what they said they wanted, but they don't know what anybody else said that they wanted. So until we figure that out.
None of us know what you want, so
And then the
that's the other
caveat was, one, get rid of the vehicle stickers. I mean, that's good. Could we get rid of the garbage bills? I mean, I don't know if we can get rid of the garbage bills only for one side. That means we got to collect the money or pay the bill back to Flood Brothers. That could be a nightmare for us. So, I mean, that's why, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And I know you with the county, and I've seen things that you've done, and I appreciate what you do for this village and for all of DuPage County. People don't even know what you do. But that's the problem that we're having. We know and I never said a word because I wasn't in any of them meetings, but Joe and Bob know, and then I got to know what they wanted. That's why it's a little, what are we gonna do? What do we take away? What do we give them? So that's
I know.
why we're
I mean,
having.
And, you know, I've got no problem, but, you know, I don't know what Carroll Stream, I think what are we known as, the home of the health clubs, the fitness center? I mean, because that seems like all we build in town, that, auto repair stores, and gas stations. You know, and I get frustrated when I see Bloomingdale have every family restaurant there can be down Army Trail Road, and they do have a struggling Stratford Square. But you know what? They're building stuff. And I don't know, we have empty grocery stores, and, you know, the village did something, they got Woodman's going there, they got Mariano's, they got, you know, they have a lot. They're taking our Aldi. They've got Costco. I mean, those are sales tax generators.
Why are they taking our Aldi?
Huh? I don't know.
I know, I mean, we know, and a lot of residents know. There's a restaurant called Wow that's right in front of that was up for $975,000. And when Aldi wanted to buy the restaurant to expand, like they did further down on Schmale, the person that owned it held that price at $975. It's not worth $975. There's no real estate around here that would have said $970. That's utopia for all of us if that's the case. My building would be worth $2 million if that was the case. The building wasn't worth $975. All these real estate people said, ain't no way we're gonna pay that. Staples goes out. I don't know what Bloomingdale, I don't think that Bloomingdale would offer them any incentives. They had an opportunity to take that building with a huge parking lot with Costco right next door to them. And that restaurant finally sold for how much? Then, $6? If she would have sold that restaurant to them, it would have been tore down, they would have expanded and stayed there. I can't tell you what to sell your house for when it comes time.
I know.
But I mean,
but,
those are the things that
Bloomingdale
we-
gave the construction, the demolition costs of Macy's, they gave it to Woodman's.
Well,
There's gotta be some kind of incentive. That's all I'm saying. If you're gonna do this, we need to refocus. But if you're gonna put property tax on the businesses here, and you've already put up the sales tax, you've put a liquor tax, you've put a gas tax, when you put a property tax in, just be careful of diminishing returns. Because when these people that own these strip malls and everything else, they're not gonna say, well, okay, that's all right. What's gonna happen? All of their rents are gonna go up. And all their rents are gonna go up, and then that means all their prices are gonna go up. So at some point, it's a diminishing return. But you guys know that.
Sometimes some businesses move out of town for corporate reasons. Aldi, they're not exactly great exposure on Geary Avenue. You go over the tracks and you're at Stark already and you're already past the building. So unless you know it's there, you're gonna go past it. Ditch Witch left because you can't blame them for expanding. They got a great property in West Chicago to demo their products. They don't have that here. They want to stay here. Aldi, I believe, wanted to stay here. But no fault of the village, but you kind of can't blame businesses, corporate reasons to move to expand and do better. I mean, like I said, Aldi,
You've got a lot of, empty, big businesses on North Avenue that are sitting there.
and I think Aldi it would have been great to be the old Piggly Wiggly. That would have been great. But I think a lot of Aldis that I know of are standalone businesses. I don't know if that had something to do with it, but I've worked here for 26 years as a police officer, and I've always thought Aldi's location stunk because it's like tucked away, and if you don't know it's there, you're gonna go right by it, and you don't know it's there because of, wow, the Egyptian restaurant that's full of weeds now.
And Jim, I appreciate everything you're saying, and just, we're not taking our industrial park, our businesses, or the commercial buildings, the small business owners, we're not taking anybody for granted. This has been one of the most difficult things we've, obviously, as you know, being in your position, that we've ever had to discuss, and in all honesty, it blows. We're in a bad position. We don't like doing this. We've been squeezing the turnip. We all take a lot of pride in being able to say, hey, we don't have a property tax in town, And the truth is, any property owner in this town could really live in this town and not pay it. It's possible for them not to pay a dime to the village of Carroll Stream. And that's okay. I mean, we take pride in being able to offer the free road service and then, free snow plowing service to our residents and street lamps and then our sidewalks, and then there's our bike pass. And on top of that, we're gonna give you free police service, and we take a lot of pride in that. And this has been a really difficult decision for us, and I promise you, we're not taking any building owners, whether it's a resident or a business owner, for granted at all. I mean, we're contemplating all of this stuff and a lot of the stuff that you said. So,
And he brings up a good point where everybody else is getting more money, but we still are at zero, so now we want to implement one. So now we look like the bad guys because, oh, well, I'm paying $12,000 a year if you implement this tax. Well, like the mayor said, all the other taxing bodies are getting what they want. So, I mean, I guess it's bad timing, but is it ever a good time to implement a tax?
No, that's what I'm saying. You take it personally. I mean, it's.
I get it.
Look at it. I mean, the library thing. I mean, I don't know why there is a library board. And I don't agree with it because you gave them the money, you gotta pass their levy. I don't understand what they do. If they don't, you know what I mean? I mean, at that point, why do we have a library
Have you
board?
gone to the library board meeting?
No.
But I do agree with your point on point of diminishing returns, that it's a very fine line of losing businesses or residents to the point that what we're trying to do goes in the wrong direction. So,
You know, I represent 11 communities. I'm here all the time. I mean, I
Yes, you
try to
are.
shop Carroll Stream as much as I can. I mean, I'm at Lowe's, you know, 2-3 times a week. They close the Ace down. Now I gotta drive to Lowe's because, you know, it's the only thing I can get in town. But, you know, that's what it is. And I'm not saying you're doing a bad job. I'm just saying don't take it personally. I mean,
Right.
nobody loves taxes. And I know from, you know, from experience, nobody loves it. And the other thing why I really came was, you know, I'm just disappointed. There was a gentleman here the other day that was talking about a senator that's under indictment, and then he said, well, is Jim Zay in jail yet? And I thought I had some friends on this board, and nobody said a word.
I didn't even hear
didn't-
that.
I didn't hear
comment.
that.
Jim, honest to God, you know.
2 hours
you
and
I've
10
been
minutes
friends
into
for a
the,
long
hear
time.
that.
2 hours and 10 minutes.
Was it the
into
morning
thing.
meeting or was it the
It
evening?
was the night meeting.
I
And
did not
I
hear
did
that,
not hear
honestly.
He was
on the
one
tape,
that's-
because my wife got the call, and I'm glad my wife's not here, because she was a lot more upset, because she feels like everything that I've done for Carroll Stream, you know, we've redone Gary Avenue for $13 million at the county, Armstrong Park, $7 million, you know, $350,000 to our local schools for pavers, for water quality. I mean, I think when it comes to everything, every event, I'm there. And I can hear, I know the mayor, and the mayor's like a father to me. And when he says he didn't hear it,
I swear.
I understand.
I honestly
I
did
don't
not
understand
hear it, Jim, or we would have
anybody else
jumped to your
didn't hear it.
defense.
Absolutely.
Somebody says that about me, who is a resident, and
It's
it just
plain
goes
wrong.
through- Goes through and nobody.
The whole
says
thing
anything.
was attacking me about the building on North Avenue in Morton, that my friend, Tom Cullerton, why didn't your friend Tom Cullerton come to your assistance and stop that building from going up? He really had nothing to say about it. And I mean, he slammed Tom Cullerton. So here's another guy comes forward. When Tom gets indicted, and he's been indicted, when he goes to court and they find him guilty, then we could say that Tom's guilty. In this country lately, it's like if somebody says you did something, we have you dead, buried, and going to jail, getting hung and whatever, pull your fingernails out.
Right.
I mean,
I have kids that go here. I have
let's
a wife
wait
that lives
until
in
the
this community, and
system-
she heard it and got calls from people and said, have you seen this? Why didn't anybody say anything?
I didn't hear
That's why
that,
I'm
but
here
I'll-
to say,
I'll tell
no,
you
I'm
what,
not in jail yet.
While you're
I've never been
standing here, I
indicted.
want you to go back and look at that, Bob.
I will.
And I want to see if that was said.
2
Because
hours
there
and
isn't
10 minutes.
anybody up there doesn't respect, and not because you're standing there. I know what you've done for the Water Commission, because I sit there with you. I know what you've done for this town with the flooding problems. I know how you fight at the county board to get us more of whatever we need. And I know, and not just because you're a resident, it's who you are.
Well, and I am a fellow Knights of Columbus member, and I know your integrity. I know I am a friend of yours, and I honestly can tell you, look you straight in the eye, I did not hear that, or I would have piped up myself.
Absolutely.
I would have stood up.
We did not hear it.
I hope that's not something that somebody started on social media to say, to get you and your
No,
family.
my wife watched it and called me, so she knows, and I did too. I saw it and heard it, so, but that's fine. And then that thing on North Avenue, you know what? I'm tired of hearing about it. The county will come and present on that building and tell you exactly what happened. 'Cause I'm hearing Carroll Stream was gonna lose $1 million. Carroll Stream was never gonna lose $1 million on that. You had a boundary agreement. The only thing you were gonna lose was sewer and water hookup. You know who lost $1 million on that because of Winfield? Was the county of DuPage. That was unincorporated. We did all the work through Choose DuPage. We brought the owner in, and then it got backdoored by Winfield and the Forest Preserve. And we didn't know about it either. The mayor knows. I was trying to set meetings up with the former village manager about how do we get water and sewer there because it's right in front of it. How do we work a deal out with Winfield? And then next thing we know, it's going. And they came to us. We held it up as long as we could. They had earnest money due, $250,000 worth of earnest money. They were either going to pay that earnest money and do that project, or they had another site in Kane County that they were going to go to. So I don't know. And did I want it in Carroll Stream? You bet I want it in Carroll Stream, because they have no purpose being on North Avenue, Winfield does. But do I cut my nose off to spite my face and then have the property sit empty for another 2 years until the boundary agreement's done? So we will come and present on that to your village board and tell you exactly what happened, because it's not good. The mayor knows. I'm not welcome in Winfield either because of this. So, and I don't think he is either, but we'll do that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Whew, that was out of nowhere. Next. I know who you are, but state your name and your address.
Yeah, my name's Skip Stubbs, 870 Farm Glen Lane. And I think we've heard through this, taxes have been going up, sales tax, fuel tax, village stickers, so it's not the question isn't, we haven't been gaining additional tax revenue. As Frank, as you mentioned, this has been an issue since I've been on the board regarding property tax. And I think Matt would.
How long ago was that, when you were on the board?
Oh, shoot, I'd hate to remember. It's been a
I'm
while.
saying 5, but you're right. I knew it was longer than 5, but I don't want to sound
Yeah.
like I'm exaggerating.
Yeah.
I know that's
That's what,
going back
15
to-
years ago?
Yeah.
So it wasn't the new guy's idea to have a property tax. Just want that to be aware.
But I guess my only concern with the property tax, and maybe it is a good idea, is that if we don't perceive that as an open book for additional increases. That, okay, now that we've got this levy, now we're gonna need more. Now we're gonna need more and more until we keep increasing the property tax levy. And I think that's the primary concern that I have, once we open the door for a property tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Skip.
Skip.
Next. If you spoke and you feel like you want to come back up, you're welcome to take the mic. I mean, I knew you were going to do that. Come on. Come on to the microphone so they could hear it at home.
Is there a cap? I forgot to ask. Are you implementing a cap? So now and in the future, it's not going to raise so high?
Did you ever ask the library board, the fire?
Let me tell you, I fought with them too over some
Well,
of
I
these
mean, really, I
things.
mean, that's a question you're asking us. We,
Yeah.
if the state comes in and takes the other million away from us and decides, the biggest thing right now for us, you keep hearing per capita. That's a head count. The big thing for us, we got to get the census, because the last time we did the census, I mean, I think.
Costs us money.
It actually cost us money because we had more buildings built and less people. Not a lot less people, but less people. So if we can get everybody counted, that's how the state figures they want to pay everybody. Because we have 40,000 or 42,000 or whatever it might be, would give us a lot more money than a town that has a big shopping center and 20,000 people or 25,000.
But it's also important to have guidelines set up, like you always say, and Carroll Stream has been responsible with money. I'm just asking that you stay responsible.
Well, like we said earlier, we always challenge our staff. You know, before we do anything, we're like, you know what, you gotta cut where you can. You know, and I'm sure people would be the first, there are a lot of people that would complain if get out of their driveway and all of a sudden they get stuck in a rut of snow because the plows haven't plowed. So I understand what you're saying, but we try asking our staff to cut where they can.
Yeah, but what I'm asking is, with this new property tax, is there going to be some type, like 1% this year and next year go up 8%? You know what I'm saying?
The one issue with a cap, we could set a cap. And then a new board could come in a few years and remove the cap. So I don't want to sit there and say, we're going to put a hard cap on and there you go, because it can be changed. Our goal is strictly not to add anything. We don't want to add any new projects or new programs. We're strictly talking about paying for what we do now without having to, without service having to take a hit. You know, we want our snow plows, we want our roads to be the best in the area. We want people to be able to get around. We want our streets without potholes and cracks like some of the other areas. You know, we want our sidewalks where they're not a trip hazard. And we, of course, want to make sure our stormwater gets out of the village instead of sits in streets and in homes.
Well, I understand that.
So it's
We want
strictly
that,
about
yes.
paying what we're paying now, paying the expenditures we have now. It's not about adding or trying to have some big slush fund or whatever people want to call it. It's strictly about paying what we need to pay. The drawback to that is, John mentioned the police pension fund, the earned police pension fund. I want to be clear on that. It keeps going up every year. Excuse me. The actuary sends us a bill, says this is how much you have to pay. And as he said, we have absolutely zero control over that. So if this year, I believe,
2.8.
2.8, it could be 3.5 next year. and we have to write that check. So there's things that sit out there that we don't have control over, that I'm not going to sit here and promise you that it will not go up at all. I'd be lying to you.
And in my opinion, the worst meeting we're gonna have, these were great. The 3 meetings we had, and I hope there'd be more people would come up and ask questions, is gonna be when we have to sit down and figure out what we wanna do, because it was spread from the bottom to the top. We're gonna have to come to a consensus of what we want, what's fair. What we don't wanna do is come back next year and say, we need to do this again, or 2 years from now. I mean, right now, we could say do nothing and last 3 years with no trouble. And then you'll start seeing potholes, and it's not a threat. We won't have the money to do the streets like we do.
I understand that you need the money. I understand, I'm just saying that as a homeowner, I would like to know that it's not going to go from, say, $100 a year to $900.
I wish that I could tell you and look you in the eye and tell you it's not going to happen. I'm going to tell you that with this board, from what I know of this board, ain't going to happen. But that doesn't mean, this state is so screwed up.
Yeah.
And I share things with you that we're told, they had once told us if we didn't bring our pensions up to 95%, they were gonna hold all the sales tax that we get back and put it in there. And there are how many, 430 billion in the hole paying theirs in the state? I mean, that's what we live with.
Yeah, I know.
I've got the head of the police pension board is sitting in this room right now. And I mean, they want to take our money and put it in a fund someplace, like they've been so responsible for that money, and then take the firemen's money and put that in their fund, and they want to control it? They don't want it. They're begging me, I got nothing to say about it. We'll fight it all the way, but, I mean, that's like, it's crazy. I mean,
Losing
that's the
battle.
state we live in. We need to figure out a way to straighten the state out, because that's our problem.
I agree there. I think most people would agree the state is.
So,
If I may, this board has a very long history of is fiscally responsible, as, I would say, probably more fiscally responsible than any of the other taxing bodies. We are very aware of how sensitive this is. I have my property, but this is my tax bill right here. I pay $12,000 a year on my house. My house is not worth what I paid for it 15 years ago. So I'm very aware that any decision that this board makes is coming out of my own pocket. It's going to impact my own family. We're all aware of that. And I think what our goal is to take out the minimum that we're going to need. We could issue bonds. We don't even have a bond rating right now. We'd have to get a bond rating. We could issue bonds if we wanted to. We don't want to. We want to continue the tradition of the past boards, and I can't imagine a future board is going to come in and they're going to change the history of what we have. We want to be the best stewards of the money that we're receiving. Even if we do, let's because Mr. Zay had asked, the minimum that we're looking at potentially right now is $3.1 million, potentially. Even at $3.1 million, that tax levy, so it'd be a little over $200 and something on the average house, that tax levy would be less than the library, the park district, the fire district, the school districts, obviously, and College of DuPage, by a lot. So our tax levy would be, the amount of taxes that you would pay in a year would be less than all of those other taxing bodies. And that's not even that's without their pensions. That's just their straight levy. Each one of those taxing bodies also levies you separately, except for College of DuPage. They levy you separately for their pension fund. We are not going to be doing that. So we can't promise you that taxes won't go up, but we are going to do everything we can to control the amount that it goes up and still challenge our staff to make cuts where cuts have to be made.
Well, that's important. Thank you.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Irene.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next, anybody? Come on.
Good morning, my name is Brian Bills, BYLLS of 432 Thunderbird Trail. I don't think anyone here really questions the services we get from the village. I think you guys all do a wonderful job, okay? Mr. Gregg here, I met for the first time this morning. I recognize the name because you wished my wife and I a happy anniversary 2 weeks ago.
Oh, happy anniversary.
And I don't know if people get that from their village trustees in other towns, okay? And I've been a resident here for almost 15 years. Our 5-year plan was to get our starter home, start our family. We wanted to move into a bigger house. That 5-year plan ended 10 years ago, and we're still in the same house because, like Mary, our house still isn't worth what we paid for it back in 2005, okay? As a village resident, my concern is we were looking at our peer groups and what they're doing. And the one common thing I noticed between all the other peer groups that we don't have is that they have property taxes and they also have debt, which kind of tells me that the minute we take on property taxes, the debt is right behind it, because those seem to go hand in hand with all the other villages. So as a parent, you know, one of the big things that concerns me with all the governments, especially at the national level, is our national debt. How much we're spending, and I'm afraid that once we institute this property tax, you said that we had one business that left that took $1 million with it.
Over $1 million.
Okay? But what happens when 2 businesses come in, they each bring $1 million with it? Now we've got the property taxes, now we've got all this extra money. What are we going to do with all this extra money? And then we're going to become accustomed to a lifestyle. And then another recession's going to hit, or those companies are going to leave. And now we can't go back to the people of the village and say, okay, we have to increase your property taxes or we cut services.
I hope you're right about somebody coming in, because then we'll never have to go up.
Because I work for a manufacturing machine tool distributor in Roselle, and we already see it, that our sales have declined dramatically. And I think, Matt, you're in the same line of work as I'm in.
See it coming.
So we are preparing for this, and your numbers on the screens here showing your decline in revenue shows that that recession is coming. They're talking about it on the news that say, you know, it's borderline, it's coming, we have to prepare for it, all right? So as a parent, I'm not against it, but I kind of see that once we do the property tax, the debt is going to be right behind it eventually.
And again, I'm always going to use the comment with this board, because you can't always guarantee it's the same board. None of us, we want pay-as-you-go. We don't want that. You know, we had that option when this building was done. Just a little really quick history on this building. This has been on the books since 2000, and since I've been on the board, 2003. It's been on the extended plans. And it was saved for. Money was put aside. Money was put aside. And it kept staying on the budget, but it did not come into fruition until we had the money to pay for it without taking a loan. We had the option of taking a partial loan, and I believe everybody up here said, no way are we going to take a loan. We did not want any debt. I believe the only debt we've ever had actually is the Water Reclamation Center, right? When we upgraded that, and that was a low-interest loan that was paid for through that fund, so it never came out of general fund. We're not big believers in debt and owing money to bond things out. And I think as long as people up here are, it's going to keep that way.
And it just tells me that the board was able to weather the recession of 2005 to 2009 and still be able to put that money aside to build a beautiful building like this.
We did a lot of painful things. I'm not complaining about it. Where other towns kept their, and you mentioned Roselle, I don't want to mention any towns. You all know who does all the Rib Fest and does everything. A lot of them have woke up like we did a long time ago. A 4-day festival, it cost us $200,000. The first thing we did was stop it. Gone. We do Thursday nights. You know how the Thursday nights are funded? T gets on the phone and calls all of the businesses. The fire union actually put some money in. I buy one myself from my business, and then a lot of businesses pay for those Thursday nights. And labor cost is all done, all through the summer, is done by people that volunteer. We don't pay anybody to be there.
And I'm not questioning, I think you guys do a fantastic job. I'm just expressing my concerns.
Which are very fair concerns, by the way.
But the debt part that you're talking about comes from ego. We don't have any ego. I don't have any. If you have an ego, I can't be friends with you, because that's not my style. I mean, really. If you have to be better than everybody else, I don't want to be around you. I like people that are just regular people. You know, people ask me why I live here. I can go to church in jeans and a T-shirt, and my people accept me. Makes a big difference to me.
You might not have an ego, but you have a reputation. And you have a reputation of having a heart of gold.
Oh, well,
Because as the current PTA treasurer at James Stream Middle School and the past PTA treasurer at Carroll Stream School, we always knew that anytime we needed something, we can count on you to get it to us. And we tried our best not to take advantage of you. And if we had to call and ask for a donation, it was a last resort. Because we knew that we could take advantage of you, but we chose not to. So maybe not ego, but you have a reputation.
thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Brian, thank you.
I agree with him 100% on reputation.
Thank you. Anybody else? Come on.
Hi, my name's Phil Sear. I live on Narragansett. I've been a resident of Carroll Stream for about 6 years. The one thing I'm kind of wanted to know is what is the village doing to help us as residents understand the financial health of our city and what changes need to be made? I mean, myself and my wife, we have a toddler. We both work a lot. We don't have a lot of time to come to meetings and stuff. So really, I don't go on social media, so I don't really see a lot of the stuff. And I was wondering, what does the village do to help us understand what's going on? So we can go to these meetings and understand what's
I'm going to
happening.
let Tia answer that question.
Thank you.
So we have a couple different methods that we use to help educate the public. Social media.
Mike, closer to you.
Put it down a little bit,
Thank
I'm
you.
a little short. We have a couple different methods that we use to help educate the public, particularly through this process. There have been items in the Examiner and the Daily Herald. We also have an electronic newsletter, which if you're not comfortable with social media, I do highly recommend signing up for our newsletter. It includes financial information, local events. We'll also share information about resources to help with energy assistance, Christmas sharing, opportunities to volunteer, opportunities to get assistance. And that can easily be signed up for. In fact, if you go just outside of this room, there'll be a yellow flyer on the table, and it's going to have information about our electronic newsletter, our emergency alerts, our social media, our website, our YouTube channel, which are all different methods that you can stay up to date with us. Also, if you have cable, depending on if you have AT&T or Comcast, we have a public access channel. That's either Channel 6 or Channel 99. We also try to make sure that the front page of our website, we keep key articles of important things that are going on. In fact, one of the articles is called Budget Update, Property Tax Discussion. And that links to more resources within our website. We've got links back to meetings from the 70s where we talked about property tax at that time frame, electronic newsletters from 2013, 2015, 2016, all through that process so that you can see the evolution of the thought process on raising funds and maintaining our budgets. We also archive our electronic newsletters on our website for a year, but if there's any information that you'd like further back, we can get that available for you. So we have electronic newsletter, we share information on our water bills, we have information that we'll post on our marquee sign, our website, our social media, our public access channels. So we are trying, and come on in, talk to us. We're always happy to answer your questions and share information. And if there's something that we realize, hey, we're really missing the mark on sharing this information, we'll find a way to adapt and make that information available.
Yeah, and I understand, you obviously are putting out as much as you can. Do you have a way of measuring your engagement with the members of the community?
We have a couple different metrics. We have an electronic newsletter, so I will see how many people are opening it versus how many people I'm sending it to. I'll see what items within it get clicks. So obviously job opportunities, that gets clicked a lot. As we've been talking about the potential property tax, I can see that that's something that gets high engagement, which lets me know that that's information that people really want to see, so I want to generate more. On top of that, we just hit 4,000 likes just this past day on our Facebook page, and that's been a big improvement since I think about 2 or 3 years ago when I started working social media. We only had about 1,000 to 1,500. We can see how far our posts on social media get shared. So I can see that a lot of the property tax posts have been viewed by more than 2,000 people. We have posts sometimes that'll make it up to 50,000 people just because they get shared around and people find them interesting. So those are tools that we're able to use to see engagement. We also try to keep track of how many people are coming to meetings, particularly on key topics such as property tax. So our first one, we had approximately 30 people. Our second one, we've had about 60. And then we'll look at our numbers and see about how many people we have here. We also track how many people view our YouTube channel. So earlier yesterday, I was looking at about 60 to 70 views on some of the previous property tax discussions. So for a 40,000 member community, the numbers aren't incredibly high, but where we focus is we see where we are, and then we continue to try to do things to increase the numbers of where we are. And we love to get input from our residents on ways that we could be more effective with our communication.
And what we don't know is how many people actually watch it. My wife watches it on Channel 6. She's got a schedule of when it's on, so we televise everything we do. The only thing we'll do, we'll go into closed session if we're talking about union contracts, and eventually that information all comes back out when we release those minutes. But we can't have an open meeting if we're talking about what we're doing to negotiate with a union, in which you have 3 of them in this town. I mean, we're an open book. There isn't anybody up here that won't answer a question for you. I call it the electronic highway we're on. I mean, some of our trustees are a lot more active than me. I try to stay off of it because I get kind of argumentative, and some of them try to answer all the questions. I can't answer all the questions. And then my staff jumps in, and I noticed the last few times that it happened, Tia jumped in, Bob jumped in, Joe jumped in. They all jumped in and tried to answer the questions. People were asking questions that don't even live in this town. That's why I ask you to step up there. Give me your name and your address, because if you don't live here, you know what I'm going to ask you to do? Leave. Because I don't need your opinion if you don't live in this town. I don't need you to bring an opinion of what, you've been here 7 years, that's important to me. If you were here for 3 days, it would be important to all of us. But we had a lot of people on Facebook that agitated a lot of us who don't even live, that guy from Oregon. Like, where's Oregon? Like,
Way out west
1,400 miles from here. Not in it, not
No,
even
the state of.
Illinois.
I mean, and that's what happens. I mean, that's social media for you. They get everybody worked up about everything. I can't wait to go back and look at that, what Jim Zay said. That really bothers me. And it bothered everybody up here when he said it, because none of us heard that. Not one of us heard that. And I hope that his wife is wrong. I know Katie real well, and I hope she's wrong, because that would really, I'd have stopped him in his tracks if he wanted to talk about Jim Zay. Because I know what Jim Zay's done for this town, and I know Jim Zay is always due for this town,
And his integrity.
and his integrity, absolutely, so. I hope that Tia answered.
Yeah,
some of your
she answered me.
questions.
I
mean,
just
we're really
say,
an open.
we, as residents, we, just like everybody else, have very busy lives, but what happens in our town is very important to us, and I think anything you can do more to reach out to us, because, like I said, I've lived here 7 years, never gone to a meeting or really paid attention too much. Anything that can help us more understand the financial health of our town, what we can do better to help our town, encouraging residents to shop here when they can. Because I'll be honest, I don't grocery shop in Carroll Stream. I go to Bloomingdale, I go to Glendale Heights, because they have the stores I want. But if I knew, hey, it can benefit you if you shop here, I think that would help a lot of us.
Probably one of the most famous sayings is right here. What do you say at the end of
Every meeting.
For
We do-
13 years now, after every meeting, I say, don't forget to shop in Carroll Stream.
And I think getting that message out more would help.
And if he's not in a meeting, the next person, if it's Mary, she'll say it, or it'll be Matt, or someone will go, and if it gets by everybody, I'll say it at the end. Shop Carroll Stream, because that's where we get our money from. We need you to shop Carroll Stream. And I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate. You can't buy a TV in this town, you can't buy clothes unless you go to Savers and buy used clothes. I mean, we're not a Mecca. We don't have a train station. We don't have a downtown. This town was built like Glendale Heights and some of the other towns. We're not 130 years old like some of them are. We're 1959, we incorporated this town. It was meant to have Gary Avenue separate the business park from the residential. So, and they had the foresight, because it's important. So if you live here, you can work right there. You don't have to drive 30 miles to go to work. 22 million square feet of industrial space, with about a 4.5% open. And that, when the big buildings that are been put up are taken, it'll probably drop down to 3% or less. I mean, it's amazing what they did and how they looked ahead to not have a downtown. Some towns, somebody mentioned Roselle, a lot of towns spent a lot of money trying to build a downtown. Bloomingdale's been trying to do it with the square that they have. You could sink a lot of money in those things. It's never going to happen. It's just not like it is in downtown Wheaton or Glen Ellen or even West Chicago. When you look at West Chicago, they've got a downtown. It's there.
And some of the other businesses that residents say, hey, you should get Trader Joe's or Whole Food. It gets checked on. Our community development does a wonderful job, and the answer we get back is we don't have the demographics for them to fit in to our town. Some of the big restaurants, like a Let Us Entertain You, not enough cars pass through the area for them to put one up here. So we can't force somebody to spend money to put something that they believe is a losing situation for them. And that's the hurdles we have to cross when you have, corporations saying, no, you don't fit our demographics.
So we mentioned Aldi's, somebody mentioned Aldi's and they left. When we contacted, community development contacted, I say we, because I work a lot of stuff with them, asked them about getting the Trader Joe's here. Their answer to us was, demographically, we don't qualify. In other words, our people in this town don't make enough money to buy stuff from them at Trader Joe's. That bothers me, okay? And in other words, they're looking at us like we're a low-hanging fruit on the tree. I mean, but they can have 2 Aldi stores, and they wanted to expand both of them and couldn't. And there's only, I want you to think about this because Jim Zay brought up Trader Joe's. How much food could people eat? I want you to think about how many restaurants we have, how many grocery stores we have, that Trader Joe's is going to take business away from both,
Woodman's, I think he means.
what?
Or Woodman's.
Woodman's, not Trader Joe's, I'm sorry. Woodman's is going to take a lot of business away from both Mariano's and Myers. Myers is known for closing stores. Mariano's is looking at some of the stores. Costco's already complaining, from what I heard, about having Aldi's right there, because now you can go in and buy a can of peas instead of a case of peas for almost the same price that you're buying the case. They're a low-cost but quality product. Low-cost but quality product. And how much of that warehouse space are they going to take in that parking lot? That's going to be a problem. But how much food could people buy? We only could buy so much food. So the grocery stores keep opening, and just like the health clubs, you could only go work out at so many places. I just saw another one, $10 a month for the first 6 months. That kills our park district, because people that go there and work and do things at the park district want to go there and work out for $10 a month someplace else. It's a cycle that we've never seen before. I mean, when the recession hit, you got to remember, I just took over in '07. I called mayors that've been around for 30 years, 25 years. Some were mentoring me. Sitting on the board is a lot different than being the mayor, because I get involved in everything. I mean, they get involved in everything, but I get involved face-to-face with the businesses. We've been negotiating with businesses. I don't say nothing until it's done, because if it got out, I could see Roselle or Bloomingdale want to take them businesses. We got a lot of things we're working on. Some of them will come to fruition, some of them won't come to fruition.
Just to make a comment about residents getting involved, I've been part of the village for 26 years as a police officer, now as a trustee, and most of our board meetings are pretty empty. There's 1 or 2, maybe 3 regulars. Being informed is great, and that's one thing, I guess, the last 3 meetings about this, people actually come out. We're actually like on Facebook, and we're pertinent, you know what I'm saying? People are taking a pride in their community and talking about the community.
Yeah.
And it takes talking about a property tax to get that out. Some residents don't even know that we don't instill a property tax.
I'll be honest, I didn't know that until I came to Northern.
I had a friend of a friend say, you know, how come we don't have Christmas decorations on all our street poles that are well lit and festive and everything else? And I'm like, well, how are we gonna pay for that? Well, I pay taxes in this town. I'm like, no, you don't. No levy. I've been a cop for 26 years. I pay your salary. The only time you pay my salary is if you buy a Slurpee. You know what I'm saying? You buy something in this town. People have no idea, really, that they don't pay a tax to Carroll Stream. They think that we're just getting an increase, and we don't have a tax, but people don't know that. And these last 3 meetings, it kind of brought it to the forefront, and people are now, hopefully they start attending meetings. We love it. We would love to have residents fill this room.
Yeah, and again, it is on us as residents, but I think it's on the village as well, because in the end, residents will leave if they feel it's too expensive to live here. I personally am not a fan of Illinois and the cost of living here. I want to leave here as soon as possible, but in the meantime, I'd like to stay in Carroll Stream. But if
And a lot of times people think the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. But you know what? There's same dead spots there too.
Illinois is losing people.
Absolutely.
Get it?
So we need to hang on to the people we can.
Agreed.
Because overall, the state is losing people.
Agreed.
And with them takes their money.
Money.
And then you have to take everybody else's money that's still here, and it's a death cycle.
The one thing I'd like to address, and I know Jim Zay brought it up, you've mentioned it, the mayor has mentioned it, we don't get a choice of the type of businesses that come into town. Yes, we have a community development department that works tirelessly to try and attract businesses, to be in contact with organizations, to bring businesses into town. But if they fit within our zoning, we can't say, no, we already have too many health clubs. No, we have too many gas stations. If the property they're looking at is zoned for what their use, we can't say no. And it's unfortunate. If we had our choice, we'd have nothing but restaurants all over town if we possibly could. Restaurants and gas stations, we would love it. Grocery stores, everything, but we don't have that, unfortunately. We don't have that control. We can't say no to a business unless they don't fit within our zoning parameters. And we've had a lot of questions about our economic development. They have a brand-new webpage on our website. And they took a lot of time to try and put it together, to try to explain to the residents how our economic development has really been evolving over the last couple of years. So if nothing else, please check that out. The other thing you had asked about is the finances of the village. This coming Monday, actually tomorrow, one of the items on our agenda is that we're going to go through and have Sickage, who is our auditor, come in, and they're going to go over our audit. We are audited every single year, so they're going to go through the audit report and the financial status of the village from an auditor's perspective. So you'll be able to watch that on YouTube if you can't make it to the meeting. But we do that every single year as well.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
And Phil, I just want to say thank you very much for your thoughtful and educated discussion here, and please shop at Carroll Stream.
Thank you.
Buy them groceries here, please. Next, come on.
Guys, I just got one question.
Name and address, please.
My name's Phil. I live at 620 Tacoma Drive. I run a home-based business, and over the past 2 years, I brought over 100 complaints about my business being harassed to the Carroll Stream Police. I just want to know what this extra property tax would buy me in protection.
I know who you are.
Yeah,
I'm wearing a T-shirt.
Yes, sir. I actually wrote to you a year ago about this situation.
I saw the email or whatever it was.
I know, I wrote to you a year ago about my business being harassed, so I'd like to know what this extra tax, how that would protect me here.
I have never seen your email. I want you to know that, because I'd be at your house if I saw your email.
Mayor, would you like me to, I could bring it up for you. I saved it for you personally.
You may have sent it, but this is the way I operate. I'm going to explain this to you. Staff doesn't want to agree with me. There isn't anything that comes into this village that is secret. If it's marked personal and confidential, what do I do, Bob? If it comes into me, what's my rule?
We open it and.
They open it and they read it. Personal and confidential. I don't want personal and confidential. I want them to read it, and then Bob takes it after my secretary reads it. She gives it to Bob, and then Bob starts working on the problem. I don't ever remember seeing that complaint from you, to tell you the truth. So that may be.
Well, like I said, over the past 2 years, I brought over 100 complaints to the Carroll Stream Police Department. You can check with Officer McGuire, too. You guys did a really good job. So with that being said, I would like to know what this extra tax revenue, how would that protect me? Because so far, I haven't received any.
I don't know how it would protect you, but I know that the deputy chief has tried to meet with you to find out what was the problem that you didn't feel like you were.
Like I said, I brought over 100 complaints to them over the past 2 years. 2 years. I've even wrote this guy. Nothing's been done. So
Well, and I guess
again, I would like to figure out
And I guess
what my
he
extra
addressed
revenue would buy me, because he said earlier that it was a pretty safe town. Well, I'll tell you right now, I'm about ready to open my storefront. It's not going to be here, and I will tell you right now, a bunch of business owners that I tattoo, I'm telling you right now, I've already told them not to open businesses here.
Well, I have a question for you. Before you ask, you run a business out of your house?
Yes, sir.
You pay tax?
Do
we collect tax from him, Mr. Baytek? I want you to make a note of that, because take his name.
Oh, is that what mattered? Because if I give you taxes, I'm still not a resident. I've been here for 30 years, except for my military service. I'm sorry. My military service, I didn't live here.
So you run I get it, I understand. So you run a business out of your house,
Correct.
You sell stuff out of your house.
Online, correct.
Online. Okay, so that you don't charge tax then.
Correct.
That legal? I don't know. We'll have to look into it, but I don't know. That's one of the problems we have, because people shop online.
But Phil, the one thing is, reading the email string, our deputy chief has made it clear he wants to sit down, listen, and wait, let me finish, and then I'm gonna let you rant a little bit, deservedly so based on your email. But he wants to sit down and solve a problem. And you did basically say, well, it's not worth meeting. So if you had over.
I've been up to the police department three times.
This is the deputy chief.
3 times. What more could I possibly do? I brought you the problem.
Talk to the deputy chief.
I have 3 times. I've been up to the Carroll Stream Police Station.
Phil?
3 times.
Okay, so whatever happened in the past, I don't know. We can't go back in the past. What can we do from this point forward?
I'm not sure what you can do.
Well,
because
would you be willing to meet with the deputy chief? Because we can't go in the past, but we can start today and work forward.
Right, but I would like to know how my tax dollars are, if you guys implement this, how my tax dollars are going to be spent to keep me and my business
We have a
safe.
police
So
department.
that way I could one day hopefully sit where y'all gentlemen are.
We have a police department that is willing to work with you today. So please, Deputy Chief Zockert, this is Phil. I say start right now. We can't go in the past, so let's start today.
And if you feel, after meeting and listening to both sides, that nothing's getting done, you can come right back here.
I hope so, because.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, a girl that I was dating was beaten up and nothing got done of it. Nothing. She was hospitalized and nothing got done of it.
Well, I don't know about that.
Again, they could check the police report. The past 2 years, I brought over 100 complaints, about 120 complaints of harassment against my business. 0 got done. 0 arrests made. Nothing. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. Anybody else? Well, I guess we could wrap this up. I appreciate the people that came in. I hope this was kind of informational for everybody to find out what we have. I could tell you that I look at how many awards our police department, and I'm not going to say that I don't watch that. They win so many awards for the job that they do, from everything from Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the car seat, from AAA, and I can keep going on and on and on. I've been with them and watched them get awards 3 and 4 at a time. I mean, the cabinet got to be so filled, they had to build a bigger cabinet. I mean, they really give back to the community. They really work hard, and a lot of things that they do is subsidized by the state of Illinois because they do such a good job. Was it a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago? We couldn't even park in our parking lot. There was state police here, there was sheriff's departments, there was police departments from all over this whole area. The room was packed with them, chairs filled all the way. And our officers are training the state police to be a drug recognition expert. Because we've taken that, they've taken that, I say we, because we are a team, they've taken that to a level in the state where there was 7 of you and 14 or 15 in the whole state. So, I mean, that says something about how we try to work. And when I hear a complaint about the police department, it's like, that's a shock, because they work with the community. They're able to get in between domestic violence problems. They're able to work. We have a whole department that works under them that's right across the hall up here in the administrative area. I mean, most towns don't even know what we do here. We have a DARE officer that most towns don't have a DARE officer. So we could try to educate the kids in the school as to what drugs, alcohol, and other things now, vaping is another thing, I mean, to talk about. They spend a tremendous amount of time in the community trying to work with them. We put a DARE program together on the south side because Wheaton doesn't work. And who served the food? The chief, the deputy chiefs. They sit with the kids and talk to them because they don't feel like they're part of this community. But the police have reached out to make them feel like part of the community. So, I mean, when I hear anybody knock the police department, I know we write a lot of tickets, and as the mayor, if they think that somebody deserves a ticket, give them the ticket. That's how I look at it. They don't think they deserve the ticket, we don't tell them they have to write tickets. We don't have any, it's not what we do. It's what they do. That's how much trust we have in them. I'm not saying that because he's sitting here. That's a deputy chief that earned where he's at. So, with that being said, anybody else have anything you want to say? Yes, sir, Mr. Ben.
Howard, can you step up to the microphone? Otherwise, it's not going to be able to be heard on the recording, sorry.
Speaking to the incredible training they're doing and to folks all over the state, is there any kind of level of forecast or potential forecast to the licenses of dispensaries that are coming up and whether or not it could in fact I'm not speaking as for or against it, but I mean, being perfectly honest, we've got slot machines in the area. I look at all of the sin taxes and different things that are involved. Have we looked at what the potential forecast of income could be if we considered that on the outskirts of town as a pass-through town?
That'll be the next big thing that we're going to have to talk about, because I know, again, we're split, and again, I won't say who's for what and what for who, but we're watching the other towns right now. I'm watching Naperville real close. They said no, then they said yes, then they come back and said no again. You already got dispensaries in Naperville that are medical. I get confused because the state says you could have medical marijuana sold in your area so you could make the money and sell it to the people. And then then the state says, but if you have a medical marijuana card, you can go home and grow 5 plants. Well, I'm going to go home and grow 5 plants if I had the card, and I'm not going to go to the dispensary and buy anything. So how do you judge how much money's coming in when you don't even know who's going to be using the dispensary?
Well, I'm sorry, from a recreational purpose, for recreational dispensaries, there's a significant amount of clear, decisive research on how much income is coming in from these dispensaries in other states. Having said that, we can look at the number of dispensaries in certain towns in other states and clearly forecast what kind of income levels it would bring to Carroll Stream.
Well, I went to Lombard's meeting, and they were projecting anywhere between 450 to 700,000.
Depending on how many dispensary licenses they get. I mean, we're in the Elgin-Naper region, and there's 47 licenses, if I'm not mistaken, that are available out there. We clearly have said we run our own race in this town, right? So we can look at what the other folks are doing, but I personally don't give a darn what Naperville's doing, whether they say no or not is,
right.
You know, at this point for Carroll Stream, if we look at it in placing them in absolutely the right places, allowing those licenses when we speak of what is an appropriate zoning position for those. If we took at any level a forecasted value to it, we might be surprised at where we may sit if we utilize those things properly in relevance to property tax right now.
We're already looking at it. We're looking at the zoning. They're already looking at where it could go in. Besides that, there's only going to be so many licenses given away because we say we want it. Doesn't mean that somebody's going to come here.
Yep.
I mean, we already know Addison's got 2 dispensaries. We already know that they approved it. South Elgin already approved it. I think St. Charles approved it. I could be wrong. I'm trying to go off memory.
I still left about 34 licenses, if I'm not mistaken, that are they're out there.
And Howard, we're taking the position right now, we're asking staff to gather information. We do plan on having an open meeting to discuss this. What I will say is, in the time that we have had the medical marijuana dispensaries available, we've had 0 approach us to put a medical marijuana dispensary in Carroll Stream. So while, yes, there is the potential that we could bring this in as a revenue stream, there is no guarantee that they're ever going to pick Carroll Stream anyway. It may be 3 years from now before a dispensary says, yeah, okay, let's try Carroll Stream. What we know is regardless if we have a dispensary in Carroll Stream, we are still going to get tax money from the state to go towards our police training. So at the minimum, we will get that. But we're still trying to gather the information.
It's a big chunk of money, though, on that bottom.
Potentially, if they're willing to come here. And so far, we've had one company that the only question they asked is, have you made a decision yet to opt in or opt out? That's the only question they asked us.
Very good question.
Well, and keep in mind, once the state approved it, we can't stop it. I mean, you can go to Addison and buy it and come here and whatever you do with it, use it. I mean, so really, we're looking at it, we're taking that Some have taken the approach, well, maybe we should do it, and some have said, absolutely not. I've been on the drug task force for opioids for the last 5 years with 2 other mayors. We started with 4, there's down to 3 of us. I mean, I've seen what it's done to the communities. I've watched the kids cry because their uncle died, or their aunt died, or their brother died. We find them all the time. I mean, I know opioids, we can't control in this state or in this country prescription drugs. Now we're gonna let everybody, no one's looking at what the cost in Colorado is of what this actually done to the communities there.
I would disagree. I think they are, and I think that there's significant impact to the communities. Their level of accidents and deaths due to driving while under the influence, all those things are increasing, and there are huge catastrophic problems with it. I don't disagree with you. I just say that if it's the cliche comment, if it's in Bloomingdale, they've got 7 licenses, they've maxed it out. We're a pass-through town. That's 3% on that income that's passing through that facility. Should we have the opportunity to participate?
Well, we've never been afraid to stick our neck out with red light cameras when nobody wanted them. And in 10 years, we had 1 complaint that was on a motorcycle tow, to be honest with you, and we never had to go to court. I mean, it's obvious what happened. We proved gambling with the machines. We got scared off one time with some of the board members about off-track betting, where Arlington Park wanted to go into someplace, and some of the priests stepped forward and said, you'll never get elected again, and it went away, and we didn't get that money. They went to Villa Park, just like we said it would happen, and they get that $160,000, $170,000 a year for off-track betting, and the gamblers are a whole different breed. They don't bother anybody. They may affect their family because they spend money, but they don't look for trouble. They don't like to drink because you can't keep your head straight when you're gambling. We've got 80 machines in town right now. It's been a good income for us. It's been better for the people that own the restaurants that kept them here. I'm a food guy like you are. I was able to look at their P&Ls. I was able to look at their books. When we approved it, I came back, it wasn't an easy sell, and it wasn't a hard sell. It's what we had to do. And all of them are healthy because of it. Every one of them that put the machines in are healthy. They hire a lot of people. You don't realize, well, you would realize what it takes to run a restaurant where you're running from morning to night, or even lunchtime till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. They hire a lot of people. And a lot of those people live right in this town. So with that, I mean, thank you for coming in. That was important. And I thank you, everybody, for coming in. Anybody have any final questions? I want to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank the staff for taking Sunday. We've been going through this. This has been a really, really rough week, believe me. But it seems like that every week. As if I looked at my calendar, next week I'm going every day and every night with meetings. We're all in the same boat. All the towns around us are in the same boat. We're all trying to feed off of each other and help each other. So I want to thank the board for being here. I know Rick, he works for WGN. He's probably announcing something, whatever, to the football game. I forgot, that's right. That's probably where he's at. But I want to thank the staff for coming in and taking your Sunday away from your families and coming in here. Thank you. With that, thank you all. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by trustee McCarthy, seconded by trustee Frizzaloni. Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Zalick?
Aye.
Trustee LaRocca?
Aye.
Trustee Geezer? Trustee Frizzaloni?
Aye.
Trustee Schwarzy?
Aye.
Trustee McCarthy?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Hey, Phil. Phil.
He ain't gonna stop for you. He ain't gonna stop.
Thank you very much. Nice meeting you, Miles.